We are reading Lord Meher, and we were reading the chapter on Meher Baba's birth. We are on page 115 and we continue reading. On, on 31st August 1903, at the age of 9, Meherwan entered the Pune Camp Government English School. He went to this school for the next 5 years. It was an all boys school, a beautifully constructed building located near the Pune drug store on the main street. It was an old school built by the British for students from the wealthier families of Pune and Bombay. Here Meherwan encountered older students and became a favorite of many. His inner nature was reflected by the sympathetic and helpful attitude. His companions loved him dearly and looked to him as their natural leader. He was such a favorite that many were always eager to sit, eat, and play with him whenever they had a chance. Since he was so popular, several youngsters became jealous and out of envy formed a gang against Meherwan and his comrades. Meherwan, however, ignored this hostility, believing that today's enemies were tomorrow's friends, and he did not react to his antagonism. The gang was led by Meherwan's friend, Bailey's older brother, Hormzad Homi, as he was called, was a desperate character with a mean streak who would go out of his way to harass Meherwan. Once, while playing field hockey at the school, Homi's team was beaten by Meherwan, and the angry boy deliberately struck Meherwan on the shin with his hockey stick. Meherwan's leg hurt intensely, and he and it being anyone and had it been anyone else, he would have fallen on the ground crying. However, Meherwan not only took the blow without complaint, but also did not strike back. Homi was deeply impressed, and though outwardly he remained Meherwan's enemy, inwardly he started to respect him. Meherwan excelled in athletics at the Pune Camp School. When he won prizes in different games, he would always share them with his friends or teammates. As a boy, he was disciplined. He had fine he had fixed times for his studies, readings, and games, from which he would seldom deviate. He would rise early and after his ablutions would pray aloud in a melodious voice. Meherwan had been gifted with an exquisite singing voice. The neighbors would also rise just to hear him sing. When he sang, it seemed as if the rippling waters of the river of poetry were flowing by. The boy's singing and the clarity of his notes affected every heart that was fortunate enough to hear him. After prayers, the boys would have his breakfast and attended to his studies. From childhood, Meherwan was devoutly religious. Like all faithful Zoroastrians, he would attend the Parsi Agyari fire temple with his parents, and the priests were impressed by his devotion. With Meherwan's elder brother Jamshed, the Navjot sacred thread ceremony was performed before a gathering of highly respected Zoroastrians of Pune when he was about 10 years old. Yet the boy was not drawn to the ceremonial atmosphere of the fire temple and used to thumb rapidly through the pages of prayer book, hoping the service would end soon. Meherwan, however, seemed to innately understand the meaning of true spirituality, as evidenced by the words spoken to his friend when he was only 12 years old. Every soul lives in the world only for a short time, and when it is our time to leave this world, we go empty handed. We do not know in the least at what moment we will make our departure from this caravanserai, but sooner or later we have to go, leaving everything dear to us. In spite of knowing this, it is sheer foolishness to be attached to this world and its possessions and hold to them at all costs. It is meant for us to make good or our short lived and momentary existence, which we can do by following the teachings of our prophet Zoroaster. It was strictly If we strictly carry out the tenets of our religion, good thoughts, good words, and good deeds, our life will be a success. And by freeing ourselves from this life's toils, we will enjoy quite a different life. Meherwan then composed these lines: the world is ephemeral, the soul is eternal. The world is everlasting, the soul is immortal. Its motion is indestructible, its love incomparable. O pilgrim, stretch your feet on this holy path. Do your utmost to realize eternity. Then only will you be happy in both worlds. The boy loved his parents deeply and was especially interested in his past past dervish adventures. The father had known from the time of Mirwan's birth that he was the son of whom the divine voice had spoken, and he patiently waited to see dervish destiny unfold. Mirwan would obey his parents and conscientiously carry out their words of advice. However, if he somehow happened to overlook their counsel, he would immediately seek their pardon, and unless they forgave him, he would not feel at ease. From his earliest years, every morning Meherwan would approach his parents and reverently bow down to touch the feet of his mother, then his father in respect. Then every night before retiring, he would do the same. Even when he rose earlier than his parents, he would approach their bed as they slept and touch their feet, never disturbing their slumbers. He considered this act of respect a sacred duty. Marwan was exceedingly loving and obedient towards his parents and Bobo and Memo, and he also called them as he always called him, felt happy and reciprocated Meherwan's love. In fact, they loved their Mirog more than their other children and did not hide the fact. Shahryar especially loved Meherwan profoundly, as his past mystical experiences had convinced him of his son's spiritual nature. At times, when acquaintances would approach Shahryar about his son's future, he would declare, I believe my son is from God, so his future must lie with God. God will reveal my son's destiny. Of course, Shahryar's friends knew of this Darwish past and would not rebuke him. Though they may not have understood, Shahryar did not think of Mirwan's future in the same manner. His thoughts were more normal, wanting for him a good profession, wife, and her thoughts were more normal, wanting for him a good profession, wife, and children. The youth's temperament was mild, very straightforward. He would never deceive or lie anyone. In cases where telling the truth injured the feelings of others, he would avoid speaking. He was not abrasive and would not deliberately insult anyone, even if provoked. His unique characteristic was that he always kept his sufferings to himself, even with his parents. Imperceptibly, every action of Mervan's from his childhood echoed the notes of divine song. The gait of his swift, graceful stride, like a deer's, was in itself a reverberating rhythm, an alluring dance of the spirit's quick tempo. As a boy, he echoed and amplified the song that was resounding in him through whatever he did. Mervan's cheerful companionship spread joy and delight every moment, dispelling any sadness others felt. Laughter and joy were always visible on his beautiful and attractive face, wrote Bailey, one of Mervan's close friends. Besides, it is impossible to express in words the magical charm in his Madhubhari Mastan intoxicating eyes. He stole the hearts and minds of everyone in their very first visit by his strong, short statured body, broad shoulders, and loving, melodious voice. In the eyes of those who knew Mervan, he was called a good student, a good sportsman, a respectful son, and a model child and an excellent singer, a high idealist, generous to the poor, compassionate to the downtrodden, a moralist, a purist, a lover of poetry, possessor of a gifted mind, a pragmatist, and above all, soft hearted. He was admired by many, but the chief reason for each one's attraction, unbeknown to any except his father, was the reverberation of the divine sound of song, which underscored everything young Persian young Persian did. From his birth, Mervan was quite different from others. In the eyes of the world, he appeared normal, yet whoever met him felt a luminosity not of this world. Thus, how could he be regarded as a normal person? Perfection was luminous in him, yet he himself was still unconscious of it. Bailey wrote, from Mervan's childhood, his actions and thoughts were so pure that everyone around him would get such feelings continuously in his presence. Young children who, howsoever disrespectful and misbehaving they may be otherwise, would naturally behave well and respectfully in his presence. Even I, being one of the bad boys, would always give full respect and never dared to utter a single bad word in his presence, although a cheerful and lively atmosphere was always maintained around Mervan through laughter, fun, and jokes, etc. It was of an innocent nature. If by mistake or unconscious action someone were to utter any bad words or use foul language in his presence, he would very sternly warn them in such a manner that the concerned person would not dare to repeat such behavior. Bailey's old brother, Homi, took every opportunity to tease or harness Mervan. Consequently, Homi and Bailey would often fight, and like his brother, Bailey had a tempestuous nature. Sometimes, in defense of his friendship with Mervan, Bailey injured others by word or deed, but if they complained to Mervan, Bailey was furious because he would not bear a word of reprimand from his best friend. Yet, yet if others criticized Bailey for his shortcomings, he did not pay attention to them. Bailey himself wondered why he became so submissive to Mervan, more like a servant than a loyal friend. It bothered him, and on different occasions he would confront Meherwan on this point. But no sooner did he stand before Meherwan than his resolve would disappear. Meherwan's mother did not like Bailey, thinking him to be a bad influence. She would scold Meherwan, that boy is no good. The sooner you give up his company, the better. Stop seeing him. I don't want him to this house. Mervan, in this instance, did not care what his mother said. He would patiently bear her abusive words. They came to a there came to be a daily exchange of words between mother and son. Since Mervan Bailey maintained their comradeship, Bailey himself was unaware of this situation until one day Jamshed told him privately about it. Although Mervan tolerated his mother's constant scolding, Bailey could not bear to see his best friend in trouble with his mother. Bailey met with Mervan and expressed his intentions to end their friendship. But Mervan was displeased and said, if this is the reason for your breaking our friendship, then you will be proving your own weakness by doing so. If you want to break our friendship, then go. I cannot stop you from what you think. But remember, we part as friends. I was your friend and shall always be your friend. In the future, if the occasion arises for you to want to see me, if need be, I shall come and meet with you. Just send word through Jamshed or anyone else. Bailey replied, It is your goodness to express such words, Mehran, but don't you understand why I have decided to sacrifice our friendship? Of course I understand that you are sacrificing yourself, but you have no idea what a sacrifice I am making by allowing you to break our friendship. You want to save me from the tongue lashing of my mother, but you do not care how deeply your words strike me. You have hurt me. You have broken our friendship, replied Mervan. The two boys then made amends and kept their sworn friendship. It was arranged, however, that to keep peace at home, they would meet secretly so as not to draw the notice of Merwan's mother's spies, especially Merwan's younger brother Jal. During this period, Merwan's family was residing behind Shariar's tea shop. Since Bailey had to rise early to fetch milk for his mother, he would first meet Merwan scrupulously, then attend to his errands. He would ride to Merwan's house and ring his bicycle bell. Hearing it, Mehran would immediately come out and they would converse quietly. Everyone in the household was still asleep at this early hour except for Shariar, who would be working to open the tea shop. However, Shariar did not mind the boys' meeting. Mehran would already be up by the time Bailey arrived. Mehran was as an early riser and would be chanting his morning Persian prayers after taking bath. Bailey was captivated by Mehran's beautiful voice, and he always made sure he was early so that he would be able to hear Mehran sing. The melodious sounds of his prayers would strike my eardrums from a long distance, Bailey recollected, and it would create unique waves in my soul. As I drove nearer and nearer, the sounds would create more and more uncommon experiences in my heart. The boys also walked to school together. I would be waiting eagerly outside my house, and Merwan would come and fetch me, and we would both go to school together. Of course, other boys too would join us on the way, and we would have a good time joking, merrymaking, etc. In the evening, also, Meherwan and I would return together. It was Meherwan. If ever Meherwan was late in leaving, I would wait for him. And if I was late due to punishment by about half an hour to an hour, Meherwan would be waiting for me. With care, he would ask me the reason for the punishment and would give me sound advice. At such times, I would bow my head in shame and listen to what he had to say without uttering a single word. After tea and snacks in the evening, we would spend the time together in the company of other boys, playing at the gymkhana, the club in the school's compound, or at Butt Maidan field. Before dusk, we would all return home. If at times I would not listen to anyone at home or behave stubbornly, insisting on my way, show anger, ignorance, or become quarrelsome, my mother would, however, manage to send a message to Merwan secretly without my knowledge and complain to him about me. I had to listen to Merwan's advice with lowered head and soften my behavior with all in the family. One morning, the Parsi fire temple had a communal feast, and all Zoroastrian boys were let out of school in um, an hour early to participate. After the feast, there was still plenty of time before school resumed for the afternoon. Mervan and his friends started playing a rough game which had one player on the ground, the hunter, who had to tag one of the others atop the wall, which had one player on the ground. The hunter who had to tag on the other atop the wall surrounded the temple on the high trees in the compound. While the hunter persuaded one of the boys, the others would leap from the walls and trees, scrambling to the base, and in the course of the game, several of the boys got sprains and bruises. Merwan, of course, also played. He was seated on the edge of the wall with his feet dangling over the side. The hunter was chasing one of the other boys who escaped and then bumped into Meherwan from behind, knocking him to the ground. Meherwan's head struck a stone, causing a deep 2-inch gash in his forehead. Meherwan started crying and was rushed to the doctor, but none of the several doctors who tried to treat the gash was able to stop the bleeding. Although different physicians attended him day and night, the bleeding continued for 3 days. On the third, a physician applied one last remedy and warned Shahryar, "Your son's condition is grave. If the bleeding continues, the boy must be moved to a hospital." The bleeding stopped after the third night. The physician was surprised and told Shahryar the next day Your son has been given a new lease of life. I do not want to tell you, but I was convinced he would not survive. Thereafter, Meherwan suffered the pain of the wound, and even though the bandage was removed, he continuously complained of headaches and weakening sight. Shirin was afraid that he would gradually lose his eyesight, and she forbade him to read or write. Finally, after 3 months, the headache went away, and Meherwan's vision returned to normal. One friend of Meherwan, who was also a student in Pune camp school, was Khodu Irani. Khodu was a husky athlete who enjoyed Meherwan's companionship. One evening, Meherwan, his brother Jamshed, and a group of boys were playing in the lane near their house. Jamshed and Khodu started quarreling and ended by wrestling on the ground. Khodu, who had a better who had the better of Jamshed, slapped him angrily and then ran away. Meherwan had tried his best to prevent them from coming to blows, but Jamshed had a bad temper and would not listen. Khodu mistakenly thought Meherwan taken had been taking his brother's side, and in and in anger he had landed the first blow. As Khodu ran away, he turned to look back. Meherwan, seeing this, picked up a stone and throwing it, struck Khodu, who fell down crying in pain. Both Meherwan and Jamshed were alarmed, and Jamshed ran into the house to inform their mother, leaving Meherwan to aid Khodu. Fortunately, upon Meherwan's inquiry, Khodu told him that the injury was not serious and that they were nothing to worry about. Both then explained their points of view afterwards, shaking hands and remaining friends. Usually, whenever quarrels arose among the boys, Meherwan was the only one who would pacify both boys and re-establish a feeling of amity. He did this in such a manner that all concerned would then forget about the dispute. Another of Meherwan's close friends was a Christian boy named Louis Vegas, who was also strong and good athlete. Louis was very fond of Meherwan and, like Bailey, were fiercely loyal to him. Louis had a courageous spirit and generous and kind. He feared no one, not even the older boys. Louis had little interest in his studies, but because he was intelligent, would always manage to pass his courses. He was quick-witted, humorous, and had fun with Meherwan. One day, a fight occurred between two of Meherwan's Irani friends. Meherwan tried to stop them from slugging it out, but the two boys were so angry he could not prevent the fist fight. As they rolled on the ground fighting, Louis yelled, "Are you going to listen to Meherwan or not? Otherwise, I will knock both your blocks off." Then Louis' confrontation, both stopped fighting. They though they are though they were still angry. This is how soothing fashion as one he could do. Then in his soothing fashion as he would do, Mervan prevailed upon the two to forgive and be friends again. The boys embraced and their mutual anger and bitterness subsided. As mentioned, the boys would often come to Meherwan to settle his disputes. If, despite Meherwan's attempts to diffuse the situation, they kept fighting, Meherwan would summon two boys who were muscular wrestlers as his enforcers. Usually, the threat to call them was enough to stop the boys from fighting. Meherwan developed a vast circle of friends and acquaintances. He was neither an elitist nor did he pay importance to the respect did to him. Even though older boys in the upper classes were also esteemed him. In some ways, Meherwan was even then venerated. However, he realized at a young age that God did not accept an egoistic. It was said that Meherwan inherited his father's good natured temperament. Sharia was highly regarded as a person and businessman of great integrity and unquestionable honesty. During this period, another incident from Bailey's account further reveals Meherwan's disposition. It so happened that once Meherwan's mother told his elder brother Jamshed, who we call Jam, to make some purchases from the cantonment market, and he asked Meherwan to accompany him. Merwan was absorbed in his studies and was disinclined to go, but his brother persisted, so he agreed. Jamshed, who had a rough nature, was not in a mood to go shopping and was upset that his mother insisted he do this errand. On the way, Jamshed collided with a small Muslim boy, and both of them started arguing about who was at fault. Merwan tried to pacify them, but in the heat of the moment, the Muslim boy uttered a particular word of abuse which made Jamshed lose his temper. Without regarding the consequence, he slapped the boy across the face and was about to do so again when Merwan uh, intervened by thrusting the Muslim boy aside and taking the slap himself. As soon as Jamshed's hand touched Merwan's face, he calmed down and they continued to the market. A crowd had gathered on the road and witnessed how Merwan took the slap in defense of a small boy. This was the quality of character of Merwan at the age of 10. But the incident did not end there. After Merwan and Jamshed had returned home, the Muslim boy brought his mother and a few neighbors and sought out Shireen. Her name was yelled out, and she rushed to the street, followed by Merwan. The Muslim boy's face was bruised, and his mother wanted a word of apology. When asked who had beaten him, the boy pointed to Merwan. Merwan took it calmly and offered his apology in the presence of all the neighbors and passers-by gathered there, and the Muslim boy and his mother left satisfied. Shireen, however, did not believe it and knew instinctively that Merwan had been a scapegoat for Jamshed. Afterwards, Shireen scolded Jamshed and warned him to stop fighting. The accusation did not perturb Merwan. On the contrary, he seemed to enjoy it by the reaction of his face. He had a smile while apologizing. Another friend of Merwan was Jal Dinsha Nicholson, a bright student who later went on to college with him. The boy had a high regard for each other. It was Jal who had accidentally knocked Meherwan off the hill. When Meherwan saw him after he had recovered, he shook Jal's hand and showered him with a gash, indicating that he was not to blame for what had happened. After this incident, Meherwan no longer played the game of hunter and pursued other sports instead. He successfully formed a field hockey team of his friends and classmates, of which he was the captain, with hopes that other t- teams would be formed and matches played. However, on the first day, the hockey puck coincidentally hit by Jan Nicholson injured one of the boys on the leg and he fell to the ground. Mervan took the injured player to be treated. That was the first and the last day of the field hockey team. Nevertheless, Mervan was not discouraged and never formed a soccer team. He received financial support from a good friend whose father was a leading merchant. Soccer practice was well for some time, but one day the same fellow whose leg had been hurt was persuaded by Meherwan to play the goalie, and during practice his finger was nearly broken by a kickball. Meherwan took the fellow to a nearby doctor who treated the injury. Then he took the boy home and apologized to boy's elder brother for persuading him to play. After this incident, the soccer team was also dissolved, and Meherwan decided not to form any other teams. He was resigned, though, and did not show any disappointments. He simply dropped the matter. In his youth, Merwan would often sit on the doorsteps of his house, gazing at the stars and moon for hours. At times, his friends would join him, but he would become so absorbed that he would seemingly lose themselves, neither replying to their questions nor sharing in their conversation. Late night and every morning were the best opportunities opportunities for Baileys to be with Meherwan, since, as mentioned previously, Shirin did not like him. In those days, very few people were on the street after dark, Bailey noted. At such times of complete quietude and peace, we would meet at 9 o'clock and continue to talk till midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning and pass out time in this manner. Bailey would ask Merwan what he saw in the sky. Merwan would sometimes reply, I saw the court of Emperor Jamshed. Other times he answered, I saw the peacock throne. Once he said, I saw the formless of the god in form. After these comments, he would laugh, and Bailey would be annoyed, thinking Mervan was not being entirely candid. Bailey recorded, during such times, Mervan would tell me about God, His creation, the laws of nature, and its importance. At times, he would speak about the spiritual status of saints, Mahatmas, and their miracles, and at times about the profoundness and greatness of Zoroastrian um, religion and important tenets of other religions. He would explain all this to me with simplicity and beauty, but I had absolutely no interest in such matter. I would interject with a few ha now and then, and I would ask him an occasional question just to please him. During one such meeting, Meher kept straining his eyes, staring intently at a spot of the moon. He pointed out the image of Zoroaster standing in front of a brightly lit sacred fire. I joked, if you continue to stare at the moon like this, one day you will land yourself in Yarvada madhouse. Mehervan responded immediately, Bailey, this world is all a madhouse. Swami Vivekanand has said the same thing, and it is true. The whole world is a lunatic asylum. Some are mad after money, some after fame, etc. So I am mad, but this type of madness is different, better than any other. This is the highest and best type of madness. Mehervan often spoke of Bailey of spirits and ghosts. He seemed to have fascination with the dead. He told Bailey, not all spirits are evil, some are in fact quite good. Some good spirits, however, are few in number and can only be seen by those who scrupulously follow the tenets of their religion. Then only the pious see these spirits. Mehervan described Sheriar's experience to his friend. When my father was a boy, he was the caretaker of the Tower of Silence in his hometown in Iran. Bobo told me he used to see many spirits while he guarded the dead. This presence was a common sight to my father, and he was not at all afraid of them and was never harmed by them. He told me that their spirit forms, the good ones, look just like humans. The bad ones look like humans also, but with their feet reversed. Their heels are in front and the legs with the toes at back. Bobo also told me that at night departed souls and spirits gathered at the Tower of Silence and held meetings. One day when Mehervan was 12 years old, eager to observe one of their spirit sessions and to prove the truth of his father's tales, he told his friends about this plan to visit the Pune Tower of Silence at night. Bailey was thrilled with Mehervan's idea, since he too was curious and fascinated about spirits. He confidently declared himself not afraid of anyone or anything. Bailey suggested they choose a night when the moon was full, but Mehervan disagreed, arguing that a dark night was better. They fixed a date, and Mehervan said, Bailey, I want you to promise me that you will do as I tell you. I don't want any of your daredevilishness. Bailey Bailey promised, and on a moonless night they slipped out of their house to make their way into the dark to the last resting places of Zoroastrians. The Tower of Silence was situated in the hill 2 miles from the city. Even during the daytime, it presented a haunting and forbidding appearance. Surrounding the stone wall was a forested area. It was about midnight by the time they arrived at the tower compound. But Mervan showed no fear. Before they entered the compound, Mervan said, Bailey, I must again insist that you promise that whatever happens, we both stick together. We have to keep silent as we climb the tower steps, and we must not turn back for home without offering our obeisance to the tower itself. We will say our prayers and then return. Again, Bailey promised. Mehervan continued, I want you to promise that whatever spirits we see, we will remain silent so that we don't draw anyone's attention to us. When we go to the steps, pray the whole way. Bailey agreed, though he knew only 2 or 3 short prayers from Avesta Zoroastrian inscriptions and was starting to feel dubious, but Mehervan reminded him of his promise and they started towards the tower. The moment the tower was in light, Mehervan kneeled and offered his prayers. placing his head on the ground. He remained like that for quite a while, and Bailey imitated him. The caretakers of the place had gone. The boys saw no one around. They heard no voices, but there was the distant barking of dogs and foxes, and the fluttering of the vultures' wings nearby. Slowly but surely, the dreadful silence and solemnity of the place had its effect on Bailey. Shivers passed up and down his spine, and he implored Mervan to go back. What's the matter? Why should we go back? Replied Mervan. We've come this far. Let's see what is here. But I am beginning to feel that perhaps this is not such a good idea. Bailey's voice quivered. Mervan was annoyed and replied, Be a man. Come, I will lead. Stay near me. There is nothing here to be afraid of. They walked further and came to a door of the tower through which the corpses were taken. No one except Zoroastrian priests were allowed to enter. Again Mervan began low and offered his obeisance. Bailey did the same, but upon rising he was frightened out of his wits when he saw a thin, tall, aged-looking spirit dressed in white with a flowering white beard. The spirit stretched out both his hands as if warning them to stop. Bailey was so struck stricken that he shut his eyes tightly and started perspiring, feeling his knees weakening. Seeing Mervan proceeding towards the door, he could not contain his fear any longer and loudly screamed, Mervan, hoping to stop him. But as if led by some force, Mervan kept walking. Bailey was so frightened that he could not turn back, and so he ran to his friend, clutched the side of Mervan's coat, and pleaded with him to leave. Mervan halted, and Bailey again besieged him. Let's not go any further. But Mervan was obstinate. No, let's go on. In a weak voice, Bailey spoke. Whatever may happen, Mervan, I am not prepared to take another step. You will have to come back with me. But why? Said Mervan. Why are you trying to stop me? Bailey could not utter. I have seen something, and his tongue stuck on the roof of the mouth. So what? That is why we have come here, retorted Mervan. If you are afraid of seeing things, stop now. I'll go on alone. Bailey burst out. If anything happens to you, I cannot be held responsible by your parents. My parents have not put me in your care, retorted Mervan. Plus, they don't know I have come here with you. So, how could they hold you responsible? Don't worry, go. Even if I die, fend for yourself, Bailey pleaded. Mervan, my dear friend, have pity. You can come again any time you like. Don't be so stubborn. Come back next time alone. But for my sake, please let's get out of here. This softened Mervan's heart, and agreeing to leave, he again offered his salutations to the dead, with Bailey's doing likewise. As they crept out, Bailey glanced at a spot where he had seen the spirit form, glad that it had disappeared. Finally, they descended the steps, and Bailey offered his thanks to God. Near the city, he sighed with relief, but soon after he made some bold remark. Then Mervan started to tease him. So, my brave comrade, you have now experienced the beings of the underworld. Say what you like, as replied Bailey. But if you have been alone and had the experience I had, I cannot say what your state would have been. I was able to withstand this sight to some extent, but I doubt whether you could have been able to stand it. What did you say? Replied Mervan. What else could I say? Have seen except an old bearded man dressed in white guarding the door with outstretched hands. You saw him too? Bailey asked, his heart palpitating. You also experienced seeing that spirit form? I believe so, Bailey, but now I cannot be sure, said Mirvan. Stop kidding and tell me honestly whether you saw that spirit or not, Bailey replied, irritated. Bailey, yet really, you really are thick headed. Don't you understand that I'm saying I saw exactly what you saw, and still you wanted to go, Mervan, without fearing what was on the other side? Inquired Bailey. What was there to be afraid of? Was the was there anyone else around but that spirit? Replied Mervan. I want to know more about the form you saw. Where were there more spirits? Bailey, you disappoint me. I believe that with the losing of your courage, you have lost your common sense as well. Tease Meherwan. Bailey's feelings were hurt and Meherwan consoled him. My friend, had I felt the least bit frightened, could I have agreed to go there in complete darkness? If I had a if I was afraid, then why did I bind you with these promises? I also would have tried to run back like you. Believe me, I didn't go there to die. Bailey felt better and asked, all right, but tell me, how long did you really see the form? It was there for only a few seconds and then faded away, replied Merwan. Bailey asked again, did you keep on gazing at the old man or did you look away? I had no reason to turn my eyes. I kept looking at him until he disappeared. Bailey persisted to satisfy his curiosity. But suppose if you had gone through the door and the form again appeared, would you have been able to stand it? Of course, why not? Replied Merwan. It was not an evil spirit, it was a pious spirit, which I would see by his appearance. He was not there to harm us, so what was there to fear? I told you before that my father explained that such spirits do not harm, but on the contrary, they protect. My father told me it is therefore necessary to see such spirits to gain their favor. To what end? Asked Bailey. To benefit spiritually, replied Meherwan. This convinced Bailey of the courageousness of his friend, and he expressed his respect. Afterwards, he requested Merwan, please do not tell our friends that I got scared. I will lose face. Merwan replied, all right, as long as you are straightforward with me, I won't tell. A nearby clock struck two as the two boys parted company. They had spent about 3 hours wandering in the night, although this was Bailey's first and last visit to the Tower of Night. He later found out that Mirvan had been a frequent visitor there before this incident. As if drawn by some strange force, Mirvan would often go to Tower of Silence from about 10 until midnight. After the experience with Bailey, he continued to go there alone to sit for several hours. It is said that he saw many other good and pious spirits, thus gathering experiences similar to his father. Mirvan had always been drawn to solitary places and derived such profound peace from these hours alone that at times he would joyously sing to himself. Meherwan's uncle Fardun Masa was a guileless man, innocent as a child, and Meherwan loved him dearly. During his school vacations, Meherwan would usually go to Lonavala to stay with his uncle and maternal auntie Daula Masi and his brother Jimshed. One night, while Meherwan was visiting with his relatives in Lonavala, Fardun Masa got up in the middle of the night to urinate. Moments later, Meherwan also woke up in the same purpose but went outside the compound but did not see each one another in the pitch dark. Standing outside with his Fadul Masa saw the shadow of the figure emerging from the. He was. He did not know it was Mervan and became afraid, thinking it was an intruder, and called out to his wife Daula Masi to come. Now, knowing his uncle was outside, Mervan, thinking he was hearing a ghost or robber, also asked out for Daula Masi to come, though he was actually not afraid. Their shouts awakened her, and she brought a lantern and found Fardun Masa and Meherwan in there on opposite sides of the courtyard. Embarrassed, they laughed at the situation. It was later recounted to be a very funny incident. We stop at page number 125. This reading was especially interesting because we read about those aspects of Meher Baba which are not commonly known or spoken about. This is about his childhood, about his relationship with his friends, and how he was a kind-hearted boy. I enjoyed reading, and I thank Baba for giving us this privilege to read and be soaked in his Diwan. We'll end this reading session as usual. Baba mein charan छोड़ न जाऊं, दाता मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, मेहर में चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, जहाँ मैं तुमको सुख लागत है, जहाँ मैं तुमको सुख लागत है, बिन कछु नहीं चाहूं, बिन कछु नहीं चाहूं, बाबा मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, मेहर में चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, तुम जैसे राखो वैसे रहूं मैं, तुम जैसे राखो वैसे रहूं मैं, तुम बिन और न चाहूं कछु मैं, बाबा बाबा जपो निरंतर, में हर जपो निरंतर, तुम पर वारी वारी जाओ, बाबा मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, मेहर में चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं, दाता मैं चरणन छोड़ न जाऊं। थैंक यू बाबा फॉर एवरीथिंग। गुड नाइट बाबा। अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय, अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय, अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय।